Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Hunter Talks to People. I'm Hunter. Today, I am honored. I'm blessed to have somebody who I've been a fan of for now 10 years. This is Matt McCarthy. He is a stand up comedian, a comedy actor, appearing on Conan, Pete Holmes' show, TV commercials, movies such as The Other Guys, College Humor, writer for WWE, TikToker, movie collector, and most recently will be playing Carl on CBS's How We Roll. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, I'm so happy I found your TikTok. It was just on my For You page, but obviously you're a busy man with a lot of hats. Is that correct?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I always I was just, I was just saying this to my to somebody. I was like, I think there's more time in the day than I'm always like, oh yeah, I can get to that, and then sudden 5 o'clock hits, and I'm just like, oh Jesus
Well, it's
Christ.
it's a dark outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and nothing's
Like,
been
oh,
done.
I didn't feed my child yet. We need
Yeah.
to
Is he
help with
still
that.
alive?
Yeah. Where is he? I don't know. The
Checking
dog's
under
still
beds.
outside. Yeah, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But
Um,
yeah. I think I underestimate how busy I am
uh,
constantly.
yeah, so you told me obviously when we were scheduling it, you're shooting. So are you shooting for the newest stuff or are you bouncing around between stuff?
Yeah, we just wrapped. We just did the first season of How We Roll. And now I guess they're just putting it together. Hopefully I stay in as many episodes as I was in. I was
Yeah.
there for, you know, 10 out of the 11 episodes, and one scene for sure while we were shooting it, because I'm very much, a side character. I have not been integral to any stories, and I'm there to be funny.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when it comes down to, well, the show is supposed to be 30 minutes and we've got 40. Unfortunately, I'll probably be one of the first things to go. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how much of the work I did makes it onto the air. But that said, uh, it was a lot of fun, and Thursday, March 31st is when it starts. CBS, 9:30 p.m.
All right, but you heard that Thursday, March 31st, CBS. Watch. I hope you don't get cut either, because that would be a shame. I mean, I'm assuming you've done a lot of work, so you've been cut out of stuff that you don't want to be cut out. Is that like awful to like put all this work into filming something and be like, well,
It's just disappointing. I mean, awful is would be if I wasn't asked to be there at all. You know,
yeah,
like I have a friend on the show who, you know, typically we're paired up, me and Judy Kane, and she's not in two of the episodes that I was brought in for. And then on the finale, she was like, I was uh, talking to a friend who she said to her friend, I feel like they just feel bad and they just brought me in, uh, uh, just for that reason. And her friend started laughing. Her friend's an actor as well, and
mm.
was like, yeah, that's exactly how Hollywood works. They always they feel guilty and they book people on jobs
yeah.
because they feel bad for you. Yeah.
What a vicious machine that is, huh?
Such a rough town. They're
Yeah.
constantly full of guilt, fear, shame, and remorse. And they're
Uh,
just constantly trying to make things right.
how long have you been there
In LA,
in LA?
we moved here. Uh, I was in New York for about 15 years,
Okay.
including when I was in college, and then we moved here about 10 years ago. This fall will be 10 years.
Okay. So for a while, so you've gotten in the mix of how everybody complains about it before they get there, then you find out whether it's worthy of complaining about or not. I
Oh
guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have more complaints about New York City than I do about LA. I
Do you
mean,
really?
if I never even have to look at another subway again,
Oh.
I'll be a happy man. I mean, Jesus Christ, the as soon as I mean, waiting around for a subway train is just a god awful experience.
Yeah.
But then as soon as the train gets there, it's just the beginning of your problems.
Yeah.
It's just the worst. It's
You
the
know,
worst.
I went to college in Philly. In Philly, they have SEPTA, of course, which is their subway system. And when I was in college, they were still on tokens. There's no card unless you were like a monthly pass guy.
Yeah.
And you had to go to the, and I know I'm complaining and I'm being a young millennial, but you had to go to the store and buy a thing of tokens and then enter them. Is this a horse and carriage ride? Like what year are we operating in right now?
Right.
So I know obviously the Metro has, has cards and stuff like that, and Philly just switched over, but it's so unpleasant. It's a terrible place to be.
It's rotten.
Yeah.
Just I have yet. I mean, sometimes if I'm late for something and I'm sitting in traffic, I'm like, oh, holy God. But
Yeah.
by and large, I would way prefer sitting in my car alone,
Yeah.
listening to music I like, than battling with the New York City subway system.
And
It's
nobody's
just like,
peeing next to you in the car.
oh my God, the sights, the sounds, the smells. I mean, just in the winter, it's you're freezing cold, but then you get on the subway and then they have the heat up to like 98 degrees.
Sweating in a
You
winter
start sweating,
jacket.
yeah, and then because then you get your winter coat on, but like you're jammed in with people, and then you finally get outside, and then like now you're sweating in the cold, and then you got to walk because the subway, unlike a car, doesn't pull up directly in front of your house.
No, there's a long distance you have to travel to just get there.
Right.
And you have to go underground. There's a whole set of stairs. You have to know which stairs to go down, be on the right side of the street. So it's really the most convenient way to get around.
It's brutal.
Yeah,
It's
brutal.
brutal.
So for the next hour, we'll be covering subways, everything about subways.
Sure,
Matt is, of
yeah.
course, a subway expert.
That's
So,
right.
Matt, if you could go on a long story about the history of the subway and sort of its inventions, I'll let you take it away with that.
That's right. That's right. I did not intend to show up and go on a rant about the
No. I love it.
But it's true.
I'm lucky to grow up in a small town here, so I didn't ever have to use the subway until I got to college. But I'm not
Yeah.
itching to return to one.
But I love New York. But yeah, when it came time to move, we were like, good. I'm sick of it here. I lived there for 15 years, so I was like, I get it.
Yeah. So going into if you don't mind, so I know in a lot of your bios you mentioned some of your time at College Humor. I've been a fan of College Humor, and for the viewers who aren't in the same age range as myself or kind of out of the demographics of College Humor, that was a comedy website turned mostly YouTube channel. That's still around today. That was originally kind of devised to be for college kids, and now it's kind of just for most younger people. But Matt, you were a huge part of a lot of College Humor sketches. I think most memorably probably the Bad Man skits with Pete Holmes, and then the JEGGINGS skits. Do you have any memorable, any memories that stick out to you from your time there?
Yeah, I mean, it was always work for hire. I was never, a member of, the College Humor staff or anything like
Right.
that. But I was, as close in the extended family as you could get. I feel like I was there, shooting something every other week. And from the beginning, very early on. And yeah, it's not the College Humor that I knew. It just doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, I was probably the biggest ones were Nicolas Cage's Agent.
Yeah.
We did permutations of that. The substitute teacher in the Jeggings
Yeah.
sketch, and we did different versions of that, and then the Bad Man sketches, which were that was Front Page Films, me, Pete Holmes, and Oren Brimmer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pitched the idea to College Humor because we were like, well, they have money. Why don't we because we were shooting our own stuff like in our apartments.
Yeah.
And then we were like, why don't we pitch this idea to College Humor and they'll pay for it? because I think it was just like when Pete wrote the sketch, the first one, we were like, where the fuck are we gonna get a Batman costume that doesn't like look like shit? And then we were like, well, we're buddies with College Humor. We'll pitch it to them. It's in that pop culture world that they goof on.
Yeah.
And it's funny now, all these years later, because it's like nobody had made fun of Batman, you know, and now it's kind of a it's almost hack.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sakes, like when I watched that Lego Batman movie, I was like, this is nobody had like this view of the Batman character until we started kind of, you know, pointing certain things out.
Yeah. Especially Bale's Batman. Especially
very much, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was at a time when they were still making those movies, and they were, you know, we were always like, we always kept in mind, we're like, we're not like making fun of it, we're just, you know, which is why they worked, because it was like we loved those movies.
Yeah.
And so they were very, very much, I mean, that's the only way that you can, you know, do a parody of something and do it well, is if it comes from a place of love. Like I think the greatest example of all time is Junkenstein. Like at no point would somebody who's a fan of, you know, that Universal horror watch that movie and be like, ugh, they're mocking the thing I love.
They're mocking the high art that belongs
right.
Only.
It's very much comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, I don't know how we're gonna get a Batman costume. We'll have College Humor pay for it, so it doesn't look like shit. And then we showed up at the first shoot. We're like, oh my god, this costume looks like shit. Like, no, it looks a lot better on camera. And sure enough, it did. I was like, oh my god, this looks like the real Batman. And then we were like, God, did the one Warner Brothers use look like shit in real life, and it just looks good in camera?
Yeah. Did he wear the same one? Did he wear the same Batman one for most of those?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess he must have. I'm sure they have different ones, but
yeah, I think it was probably nice inside, huh?
It must have been. The one Pete wore was hot, and I mean, they were, because we would shoot him in the summer sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when we started coming out to LA to shoot them on, like, not sound stages, but like in small, like, studio spaces in, like, you know, Boyles Heights type area. And it was fucking hot, man. And then, like, there would be times Pete would take that thing off and, like, literally, like, he would pour sweat out of the helmet onto the ground. It was rough. Like the Riddler was a really, really hot day, and the one when we did Bane, really hot. And that one was,
that's one where, like, you're kind of propped up behind, you know, in the that one. Oh, gosh,
and that one was particularly brutal because, like, I couldn't, like, I had the bald cap and then the gear, so, like, I couldn't take it off. I couldn't even eat lunch. But, like, I couldn't drink water the whole time. So it was like,
this is suffering for the art. Seriously, that's great.
For real, it was rough.
Yeah, well, I can't even imagine. I mean, every person who's played Batman up to now, it's legitimately sucks. It has to suck because there's no way to make rubber breathable, so it has to suck. No. I have to say, I would be ashamed to see the number of times that I've watched these sketches, the ones that you were in, whether it's the Nicolas Cage agent, mostly the Jeggings ones. My friends and I can do them from memory. That's how many times I've watched it since it came out.
Man.
Like, legitimately, probably from memory. So if you don't mind, if I could ask you a couple of questions about those sketches in particular. First one being, I've been a fan of Jake and Amir, for those you don't know, a long-running College Humor series, and I was kind of able to track College Humor's history. So they moved early 2010s, I think, from New York cross-country to L.A. Was that around that time? Where was that one filmed? The Jeggings sketch?
The Jeggings were all in New York. Those were shot in a decommissioned, if that's the correct word, Catholic school in Brooklyn.
Ironic.
And oddly enough, that was every one of those Jegging sketches were in that building. And one of the first College Humor videos I did, maybe even the first one, outside of like, like going to their offices for like they would do like an all-night marathon thing. I forget what they
Yeah.
called it.
All-nighters?
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
all-nighter. I
Yeah.
did one of those where I was the devil and somebody has devil sticks and I show up. That I think that was the very first thing I did. And then after that was the other team, where I play the coach of the other team in like the Air Bud movies.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
and that was in the basement of that same school. And then the first movie I ever did was The Other Guys, the Adam McKay, Will
Yeah.
Ferrell movie. And that was also the scene we shot was in that same school.
Really?
Yeah. And it was all like, this was when I lived on Graham Avenue in Brooklyn. So it was like walking distance. I would walk to those gigs.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time we did a Jeggings one, I would like kind of just like walk there, like with the script and kind of memorize my lines on the walk there.
Like those were not table read. You were just you read them and showed up.
Yeah. I mean, the College Humor was such a it was just such a I was so used to the routine that like I could read a script and pretty well see where the breaks were, like where like how much we would like the chunks we would shoot and like memorize as we went, type of deal. There was only one time, and I was a last minute replacement.
Were you really?
Well, for a video called like Stupid Tie, which was like a parody of Suit and Tie, the Justin Timberlake song, which like they were shooting, so say that they were shooting like on a Sunday. I got an email Saturday night and was like, hey, somebody dropped out, can you do this? And I'd never heard the song before.
Really?
And no, I just don't. I listen to the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And I looked at the script and it was a music video and I was like, well, and I would be lip syncing to, this track. And I was like, well, we must be shooting this in chunks.
Yeah.
And I showed up and they were like, we'll be shooting it in chunks, but like there's like a main, like if you picture like a music video or like, the singer's performing in like one setting and then like it keeps cutting to different like locations.
Right.
So like the main singing with like dancers behind me, they're like, oh, we have to do that all in one take. And I was like, okay. And it was awful. It was awful because I didn't know the song. I didn't know the words. I was just like, all right, guys, like
seat of your pants, just like night before, show up the next day and do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And that was like one of the last things I did with them. It was like towards the very end of my run doing stuff there. But like the Jeggings things, I mean, again, it was just kind of show up, do the deal, and like because it's always easier, I think, when I'm in a conversation with like another character in the thing, because so I know I kind of have a good idea, like when they say this, I say that.
Yeah.
So the Jeggings things were, it's just one after the next. Like each kid, it's just like, I'm wearing this. Is this okay? No.
Yeah. It's just a tit for tat back,
right,
back and forth the whole time.
And I'm very much just the guy, who's just like lobbing the football back at these kids who are just wearing these insane outfits. But yeah, I mean, it all blends into one. I couldn't tell you one video.
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't tell them apart.
Yeah, I mean the format's the exact same for all three. It just escalates, across all three videos. But I mean, there's so many my favorite quotable moment. You've done so much stuff, you probably don't remember it. But a girl goes, "How am I in trouble?" And you go, "Is that a real question?" And I can't tell you how many times we've said, "Is that a real question?" In my friend group or something like that. So there's a ton of memorable lines in there. If you haven't watched them, people who are listening, watch those. Problem with Jeggings. One last question for those. All of the most of the outfits involved being nude. It was like I'm guessing like nude colored clothing underneath all of the
Right. Yeah.
ridiculous, dresses and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a flesh toned I'm trying to remember what they call those things, like a dance
Like a
like a dance
leotard.
sock or
Mhm.
a dance belt, because
Okay.
that's something that I like times I've been at Conan
Yeah.
is where I'm like basically either naked or you know close to it. I would be wearing, I think that's what it's called, like a dance belt, and it's just like this like flesh colored, you know like teeny tiny, like almost like a speedo deal that you
Mm.
put on, um and then you may as well be naked on
Yeah.
camera.
That must feel real nice to have to be in
it's
that
it's
for
it's very
everyone.
secure. You feel very very warm, snug, and secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, thank you for shedding some light on some of my like this. It's the stuff that I saw you in first, and like caught you on like a Verizon commercial that you did once. I'm like, oh my god, like he does more and more. Then by the time you had a TikTok, I'm like, like how many things I'm adding to the list that you've been doing? And the one that I didn't know, I think a lot of people don't know, is a writer for WWE.
Yeah.
Um, I've been a casual fan of WWE since I was a kid. I was blessed to go to WrestleMania in New York, and I've loved it. I know that it's a tough job. Any position at WWE is a tough job with a lot of short careers there. Was that a really difficult thing to do?
Yeah, it's an endurance test. Especially being on the creative team is because it's so volatile. It's constantly changing, for tons of reasons. Chief among them, Vince McMahon changes his mind quite a bit. But it's also just it's live TV, so things happen. People go out there and they, you know, things change because somebody gets hurt or somebody. I remember I was working there when uh we were we had we were going into Chris Jericho versus Randy Orton, and we didn't know why they were fighting, but we knew that that was the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had an idea. We get to TV. Jericho doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
He's somebody who's very hands on with his stuff, which is like great. I don't care. I don't care. Just
Yeah.
I was at the point too as a writer where I was just like, you know, say whatever you want. I don't give a. I don't give. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Um, and so he rewrites whatever we had. We go into Vince's office to pitch it. Vince hates it,
Yeah.
and so now we're sitting there, the three of us, trying to think of something on the fly. And as Vince is, talking it out, and my whole motivation was, I just want to get out of Vince's office. I just want this to be done.
That must be a
And
terrifying place to be.
it's just awful. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's just, there's nothing but an opportunity to be, yelled at or belittled or just like, because you just have to stand there and take it. And it's just like, I don't care. Like, I love wrestling.
Hmm.
And if it was any other like show, uh, I would not have put up with it for as long as I did.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you were there
but
for years, right?
I was there for a year, and then quit, moved out to LA, started doing the Pete Holmes show when we had it was a talk show after Conan. And then when that wrapped, maybe like a year or so later, WWE reached out and they were like, well, would you consider like consulting, like stay in
Hmm.
LA, keep doing comedy, and just work remotely? And then I did that for 2 more years. Um, and it was a situation where it was just, that was perfect because I didn't have to be at TV, didn't have to be in Vince meetings. Um, it was just purely writing first drafts or punching up stuff so that they, you know, like do a joke pass.
Hmm.
And it was great. But like, you know, when you're there, like with the Jericho thing, we came up with an idea and it was very thin. And it was just, all right, Jericho attacks Orton and we're trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
And before next week, Jericho got in trouble for, you know, I think they were somewhere overseas and he did something with that country's flag. Obviously in character as a
Hmm.
heel, you know, disrespected the country's flag somehow and then got
Yeah.
suspended from WWE. So then it was like, all right, well now I don't have to worry about
Problem
big
solved.
big problem solved. I don't have to write anything for
Yeah.
Jericho and Orton this week.
Yeah.
Um,
Perfect.
so things like that. But like obviously injuries is another big thing, or you know, somebody doesn't catch their plane,
Yeah.
you know, that type of stuff. I mean, it's just so there's this constant juggling, but it's also just, you know, it's just a it's just a it's just a toxic environment to work in.
Hmm.
um and it just trickles down from the top because it's just Vince is who Vince is, and then it becomes the culture.
Yeah.
Whereas say like something like How We Roll was near the top, if not the very top of like one of the most positive experiences I've had of like everyone was cool, everyone at the top is cool. You know, Mark Gross, the showrunner,
Hmm.
is just awesome, open to ideas. Pete, I've known forever. He's in a great place. I'm in a great place. And it's just like, this is
Well, it
a
makes it way
delight.
easier for everybody.
It's a way easier. The crew is fun. The cast is fun. Everybody knows how to do their job. And it's just, and the show's good
Yeah.
on top of
Yeah.
it. So it was like one of those things where it's like, well, it's up to America now, because
Well, it's almost like if you create a good working environment where everybody's,
yeah,
enjoying themselves, that
yeah,
maybe, just maybe, it creates a good product on the end.
true. But
Yeah.
it was such a positive experience to the point of like, well, there's no way that this gets picked up for a second season because this is too we're having too positive of an
Yeah.
experience.
Is
You know,
something wrong?
the universe will never allow that, like it has to even out
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
um but I mean, like even like we had like a small rap party, and I was talking to one of the members of the crew, and he was like, take a look around. He's like, this is everybody here just did a 10-hour day and they're happy to still be around each other. Like that's not usual.
Yeah.
And like, or like, you know, this is a guy who's been in the business for 30 years, or like talking to a PA who's this is her first job, and she's like, people keep telling me don't get used to this, not every job is like this. I'm like, it's true, this has been an absolute pleasure, you
Yeah.
know.
I'm genuinely excited to see it. I was looking at some stuff online, reading like there's an article posted about it and whatever. Pretty excited to see it. Congratulations on wrapping that recently.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it's got heart, but it's not, you know, saccharine. It's just if that's a word.
Hmm. I like.
I think that's the word I
If
wanted
you
to
wouldn't
use.
have stopped, we would have just rolled right on through.
But I mean, it's like, you
I
know,
believe
but it's
it.
also funny, but not in a, you know, oh, this is for, you know, who's this show for? You
Yeah.
know, what we're like explaining the joke
Yeah.
type thing. Uh so, you know, I'm proud of it, and hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, here's to hoping. So if you don't mind, if you have the time, I usually take the last few minutes to talk about like an interest. If you want to cut it here, we can cut it here. If you want to take another five, that'd be great too.
Yeah, no, like I have lots of interests. I'm sitting in a room surrounded by VHS tapes and DVDs.
Yeah, you do those movie polls for those who don't know. It's TikTok. People say, "Do you have blah 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 movie?" And most of the time, you just pull it right off your shelves. So,
Yeah,
Yeah. Is this a lifelong collection?
absolutely. Yeah, I have stuff here. I have tapes here that I taped off of pay-per-view in like 1988, you know.
Mm. Is this stuff that maybe you have the only taped version of? You think?
Uh I mean, perhaps
Yeah.
like things that are taped off of TV, um, for sure you start getting to that area of, you know, uh, does a copy of this exist anywhere
Yeah.
else?
Right.
Maybe. Um, like there was a I'm trying to look because I have some of this stuff written down. Like I
Hmm.
found one tape of a show, and by show I mean like, do you get Svengoolie where you live?
Do I? What is it?
It's on
Mm.
it's on MeTV. It's
Mm.
just it's probably one of the only ones left. Certainly on the national level, it's the only one. It's just, you know, a guy dressed in monster makeup hosting B movies.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
but so this was a show not so dissimilar to it. There was no host, but called the Cat's Pajamas.
Okay.
It was an all night show on WC WGRZ in Buffalo,
Okay.
and they ran old movies and TV shows. And the format, I guess they did it from like 83 until 89. It was also sometimes called Barry Cat's Pajamas, when the weatherman Barry Lillis hosted it until like the end of 85. But like I have a random copy of, you know, just this
Yeah.
zombie movie,
Yeah.
this like weird like Japanese like zombie movie, and it's just like every so often, you know, it just goes to the station identifier. It's just like, you know, the Cat's Pajamas,
Yeah.
WGRZ Buffalo, and it's like I don't think there's
Yeah.
a
No.
lot of copies of this
Yeah.
particular specific night of television floating around.
Yeah.
Um, or like I have a copy of um the Paul Newman movie Fort Apache the Bronx,
I,
just on some random, you know, like St. Louis affiliate
do you
playing
watch
it.
all this? Do you watch all
Oh, I
the
love it.
Yeah.
It's so relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it's from KTVI Channel 2 St. Louis,
Uh,
January 4th, 1989.
man, gems.
Right. So
Hidden
it's like, so on
gems.
this tape it's just, you know, um it's the end of a Geraldo episode where he's talking to homeless vets. Um then there's like some ABC News briefs, a McDonald's commercial from 1989, which was I started watching and I was like, holy,
That's gonna be a time
I
capsule, huh?
remember this. And
Yeah.
it was some deal they were doing because, you know, it's January of 1989, so everybody's excited. It's the end of the 80s, and so it was like 89 cents was the deal, and it was like,
Hmm.
this burger's 89 cents, this thing's 89 cents. And then the commercials all like stars from like Leave It to Beaver, or it's just all these like golden era, you
It's
know,
literally a time capsule commercial.
literally. I mean,
Yeah.
like Grandpa Munster is in it, and you know, uh Don Adams is in it.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, it's wild. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things like watching it when you're a kid, you know, like literally I was like a 9-year-old kid watching it. I'm like, I'm not sure I know who these people are, but the adults in the room are going, oh, Eddie Haskell, always being Eddie Haskell
Um,
type of stuff.
the B movie intro. I mean, that's sort of similar to like what Vampira did, right? I mean, this is like
Exactly.
yeah, same concept there, right? I'd say honestly, the last thing I wanted to touch on was looping back to wrestling in general, not WWE specific. But so speaking of Jericho, I'm actually going to AEW tonight in Bridgeport.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I'm excited for that. I've never been to an AEW live show. Plenty of WWE.
Oh, are you in Bridgeport, Connecticut?
I'm about an hour away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's I forget what the brick and mortar store is called, but Vinegar Syndrome
Hmm.
has a, I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Hmm.
They are a, a Blu-ray boutique label.
Okay.
Um and they do a lot of, you know, film preservation, of like really random, sometimes, bad or schlocky
Yeah.
movies. But they have a location called the Archive in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Do they really? That's cool. That
Yeah, which
sounds like a
is
really cool place.
totally, I, you know, if I'm ever on the East Coast again, or certainly in, you know, Connecticut, I would go over there, because apparently that's, but like they have a store where they sell, copies of the movies, but it's also where they, scan all the 35 millimeter prints of the stuff that
Yeah.
they find.
Yeah.
um Worth checking out.
Yeah. That sounds
Hashtag
awesome.
not sponsored.
Okay, fair. Well, I mean, for me, I love records, love 12-inch records. So anytime I go into like an old record store and might find the most obscure, you know,
Yeah.
three press edition of something, it's like the coolest thing. But one last quick thing with wrestling. I'm wearing a Paul Heyman shirt. Um, Paul Heyman, for those of you who are not into wrestling, which is 99% of people listening,
Of the
unfortunately,
population of the
of the
planet.
popular. Well, remember, Matt, it's fake. Just letting you know, in case you weren't on the wave. I hate that argument. I listened to your stand up at recently you did years ago about people saying
Oh
wrestling's
yeah.
fake. Yeah. Thanks,
So
detective.
it's like,
Uh,
wow, you cracked the case.
yeah. Thank you. But yeah, so Paul Heyman, for the non-wrestling fans, is one of the guys who kind of comes in the microphone. He's not a wrestler, but he's a manager, as they call him, or a valet, to a degree. And I believe that truly, like, he's a master of his craft. I don't believe. Please disagree with me if I'm wrong here, Matt, but I believe he's the best on the mic manager that's ever been in the business ever. Um, am I
uh
wrong?
I would say, Bobby the Brain Heenan is probably better.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Have you ever met Paul?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, a couple of times. We
How
did it.
different is Paul and Paul? Like
No,
TV Paul.
Paul is Paul. Paul
Yeah.
is that guy. He's you can sense it, why ECW, that locker room, was,
Yeah.
halfway to being a cult. And he turned that audience into, cult followers. He's just clearly brilliant. Clearly, I would never want to play chess with him,
Mm,
put it that way. But it was very much a we shot a thing where he was, answering a question via satellite,
okay.
and we actually shot it in at the little studio space they have in Bridgeport. um and it was a lot of just sitting there all day waiting. um and so just kind of, shooting the breeze, chit chatting type stuff. But I remember, once he kind of pried it out of me, and it's one of those things, I think a lot of, if not every stand-up comedian will, like, they don't really want to tell somebody that they're a comedian, because it tends to lead to a lot of, a line of questioning, or just like,
Yeah.
oh, well,
Tell
tell
me,
me a
tell me a
joke.
joke. Yeah. I mean, I work
Or
in
like,
finance, right? You wouldn't ask me, can you
right,
do a quick calculation for
yeah,
me?
yeah, do my taxes real quick.
Yeah.
um but it is very, but so, and then he's like, oh, well, do you know the blah 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 joke? And I was like, no, I don't know the blah 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 joke. And he starts like reciting this joke to me, and I was like, okay. And it was just like, and there was something in the moment where it definitely felt like he was kind of proving to himself, and I guess to me, that I wasn't a real comedian, because I didn't know this
Yeah,
long, elaborate joke.
because you're
There's
not a
not,
comedy historian.
I guess, because I haven't memorized a riddle uh, that he was able to rattle off. That I was like, okay, whatever it is you need to prove right now, is go right ahead and believe it, because I just want to get out of here.
Oh, you're a
My
comedian? Name every joke ever.
right.
Oh, oh God, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um, do you? So the Paul Heyman question. The reason why I ask you is, obviously, I think there's a good case to say that Paul's maybe the second or third best, but he's certainly my favorite. Do you believe that there's anybody else in the business, not just WWE, whether it's ROH or New Japan or even AEW, that's maybe a little too recent? Who do you believe is like a total master of their craft, whether it's an actual wrestler or somebody behind the scenes? Like, is there anybody who's like a true, like, total master?
Um. Well, I mean Vince McMahon, but unfortunately he's isolated,
Mm,
and either physically and just mentally from reality.
yeah,
So his creative forces tend to suffer because of it. He's surrounded by people. He doesn't make a safe environment for people who have dissenting opinion.
yeah,
And then and then you wonder why the product is in the shape it is creatively.
yeah.
Um, the fact that there shouldn't be an AEW.
Mm.
It's
They
and
shouldn't have let
and
that happen.
no, and
Yeah,
also he's not in a position to do anything about it. That's the sad thing,
yeah,
because Vince is capable of, you know he's an absolute genius and master at his craft, but he cannot help but get in his own way.
yeah,
His ego won't allow it.
yeah. But the existence of NXT and NXT UK should mean that there should be no AEW. I mean, that's the point. Is it? It's the meant to be WWE's indie league. That means there shouldn't be an AEW if those were good.
Right, but I mean, you go back to when they revived ECW in name only.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, this is not
ECW.
ECW. This is a WWE show. This has Vince McMahon's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, people that are masters of their craft. I mean, Brian Danielson, or Eddie Kingston, or John
Mm-hmm.
Moxley, um, uh, like a Kevin Owens, or a God. There's so many.
What about Mick?
Oh, Mick Foley, forget
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Got to meet him
Um,
in person. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Truly genuine, what you see is what you get, and just yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I could sit here and talk about wrestling forever because I love watching it and I love going. But obviously in the interest of time, um, you know, that's what I have, man.
Wonderful. Well,
Uh,
thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for coming on. So, for those of you who want to keep following Matt, please do. He's obviously on Twitter or TikTok if you want to watch him do videos, and How We Roll coming out Thursday, March 31st. Is that right?
That's right. On CBS, Thursday, March 31st, 9:30 p.m. is the series premiere of How We Roll. Please check it out, and tell everybody you know. And it's, it's something I'm very excited to be a part of. And yeah, you can listen to the We Watch Wrestling podcast every Wednesday. And also, I have a movie and TV podcast with my beautiful and talented wife, Glennis, called Watch It with Matt and Glennis. We are probably doing new episodes on Mondays going forward. And then, yeah, McCarthy Redhead, all forms of social media. Check it out. And you can listen to my stand up on, wherever you stream music, all those wonderful places.
Cool. And for Hunter Talks to People listeners, you find the video version of this podcast on YouTube if you want to see mine and Matt's beautiful faces, and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you think I have a voice for radio. It's always there as well. So, Matt, thank you again.
Hell yeah.